The public discourse is saturated with kinetic threats. The media amplifies headlines of an Iranian all-out war and promotes discussions on expensive shields like brilliant pebbles. This is a calculated diversion. The dominant escalation vector is not a missile launch. It is systemic, asymmetric, and silent. The true strategic objective is not to defeat the West in a symmetric war, but to sever its nervous system. CSIS and RUSI analysis confirms adversary doctrine is focused on the two critical vectors of data transmission: the subsea fiber optic cables that carry over $10 trillion in financial transactions daily, and the satellite constellations that govern navigation, communication, and timing. The attack is not an explosion. It is the sudden absence of a signal. A simultaneous lights-out event targeting these nodes creates a condition of total sensory deprivation. This is the blueprint for creating the blind Leviathan, a Western financial and military apparatus with unparalleled kinetic power, but its eyes and ears removed. A blinded entity cannot verify liquidity, clear transactions, or deploy assets with precision. Its strength, calibrated for a world of perfect information, becomes a catastrophic liability. In this state of induced chaos, its launch-on-warning posture is no longer a deterrent, but a mathematical certainty triggered by silence. The real weapon is not the warhead. It's the kill switch for the global financial protocol. The motive is not strength. It is a solvency crisis. A symmetric, kinetic war against the West is unwinnable and, according to CSIS analysis, a terminal domestic liability. For a state like Russia, a protracted, unpopular war is a vector for internal collapse. They cannot afford a launch-on-warning posture funded by a populace on the brink. This mathematical reality forces a pivot. It is not a choice. It is a mandate dictated by weakness. When the kinetic cost is prohibitive, the theater of conflict must shift to the adversary's core systemic vulnerability, its financial protocol. This is the logic of asymmetry. Weaker powers cannot win a direct engagement, so they don't try. Iran's threat of all-out war is not a military strategy. It is an economic one, engineered to trigger a market collapse and impose an unsustainable solvency cost on any intervention. This asymmetric blueprint is now operational. While the West debates kinetic shields like brilliant pebbles, the actual attack is on the balance sheet. Reports from Asia Financial confirm the Reserve Bank of India is proposing a framework to link the digital currencies of the BRICS nations. This is not a trade pact. It is the construction of a parallel liquidity system, explicitly designed to deleverage the dollar and bypass the Western financial protocol. China's ability to hit economic targets despite a trade war proves the resilience of this parallel structure. The central miscalculation is believing this is a preliminary phase. The solvency crisis is not a future event triggered by war. The attrition against the dollar's reserve status is the war. The primary objective is to drain the financial leverage that allows the West to fund its overwhelming kinetic power. Every transaction that bypasses the dollar is a quiet attack on that solvency, making the West's expensive military arsenal an increasingly unaffordable liability. The central calculation is the economics of lethality. According to analysis from institutions like the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, the cost curve has been inverted. A $5 million main battle tank, a pillar of symmetric land-based power projection, can now be neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is not a one-to-one exchange. It is a 10,000-to-1 leverage ratio working against legacy military hardware. This radical cost disparity enables a strategy known as the democratization of violence. The capacity to project destructive kinetic force, once the exclusive domain of nation-states with trillion-dollar defense budgets, is now accessible to non-state actors and second-tier powers for the price of consumer electronics. They do not need to build a carrier strike group. They just need to find the economic weak point. Every destroyed high-cost asset is not a simple tactical loss. It is an attack on the solvency of the Western Defense Protocol. It's economic attrition executed with kinetic tools. Forcing an adversary to expend $5 million to counter a $500 threat creates a systemic capital drain, turning a nation's most expensive kinetic shields into its greatest financial liability. The primary vector of this conflict is not geographic, it is systemic. However, specific regions are being instrumentalized as gray zone laboratories. According to RUSI analysis, these territories are not experiencing random chaos, they are calculated testbeds for asymmetric protocols. Kinetic threats, such as Iran's warnings of all-out war, are a deliberate misdirection. They are designed to fixate Western defense architecture on physical force projection, a domain where it feels most competent. While the Pentagon games out kinetic shields like brilliant pebbles, these proxy zones are used to stress test Western political will and, more critically, to stage the deployment of financial counter-protocols. The instability is a feature, not a bug. It is a low-cost, high-yield laboratory for refining the very blueprint, like the Reserve Bank of India's proposal for linked BRICS digital currencies, that targets the solvency of the dollar itself. The doctrine is designated Launch on Warning. According to strategic frameworks from CSIS, it is a legacy protocol mandating an immediate retaliatory strike upon detection of an incoming attack. The logic is zero-sum. Absorbing a first strike means forfeiting the capacity to retaliate. The entire deterrence architecture is therefore leveraged on a single point of failure, the absolute integrity of the warning signal. This system is now vulnerable to what RUSI analysts term the fog of digital war. In this scenario, the initial vector is not kinetic, but digital. A sophisticated cyber attack doesn't target silos. It targets the sensor grid itself, blinding early warning radar and satellite feeds. The screens go dark. The commander is left with no data, only the protocol. This forces the commander into an inescapable logic trap. Is the signal loss a technical glitch, or the silent prelude to impact in minutes? To wait for confirmation is to gamble with total asset liquidation. The protocol thus compels a launch based on the absence of information. The fear of a successful decapitation strike becomes the trigger. This is the ultimate asymmetric liability, a cornered system where the perceived strength of the kinetic arsenal becomes the very mechanism for its own hair-trigger deployment. The blueprint for deleveraging the dollar, evidenced by the BRICS proposal to link digital currencies, requires a series of tests before full execution. Source number 4. These are not kinetic strikes, they are solvency probes. While RUSI analysts note the West game plan's kinetic scenarios, source number 2, and builds orbital shields, source number 1, the true theater of operations is the digital ledger. The next phase is not an overt attack, it is calibration, a shot across the bow designed to measure systemic fragility. The objective, trigger a flash liquidity crisis to observe the Federal Reserve's response time and map global contagion vectors. This provides the final data set needed before a systemic decapitation of the protocol. Within the next 12 months, anticipate a catastrophic, attribution-impossible failure of a core financial settlement system. Not an exchange, but the plumbing beneath it. A multi-hour data corruption event at a Tier 1 clearinghouse officially designated a black swan technological failure. It is a rangefinder.